So, hello then, welcome back to another Nights of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Civl War. So, let's get into it, shall we? Civl War is this new film written and directed by Alex Garland. And Alex Garland is probably best known for writing such well-known films as 28 Days Later and Sunshine. Out of those films, I've seen Sunshine, I haven't seen 28 Days Later. And from what I remember, I didn't think Sunshine was particularly that good. I don't think it was really for me. And at the same time, Alex Garland has written and directed such previous movies as Ex Machina, which I remember liking quite a lot, Annihilation, which I watched for the first time last week, and it wasn't for me. It had some interesting ideas, but it got a little bit too weird for its own good, in my opinion, in its final act. Men, which I haven't seen, and now this film. And notably, this film, Civl War, is produced by A24 and is their biggest budget movie to date, with a budget of $50 million. Now that doesn't sound huge compared to some blockbusters that come out nowadays, which have budgets of like, I think the last Fast and Furious movie had a budget of over $300 million, which is just mental in my opinion. But anyway, it doesn't sound like a huge budget compared to some other big blockbusters which come out nowadays, but compared to other A24 films which usually have a really small budget, a shoestring budget at that, and are made for under $10 million, this is a big budget for their standard. And I was interested in this film because of that reason, because this is A24's biggest and most expensive movie to date, and I really like the trailers. The trailers had me interested in seeing the film, although I wouldn't say they had me excited about seeing the film, because when I heard it was coming from Alex Garland, when I heard that Alex Garland had written and directed this film, I was not that interested in it, because I'm not the biggest fan of Alex Garland. I like Ex Machina, I think Annihilation has some good ideas, and I haven't seen 28 Days Later, which I know a lot of people say is, you know, some of his best work in terms of writing, so I can't comment on his work too much, but from what I have seen of his previous films and his previous work in cinema, I haven't particularly loved, and I didn't love the idea of him doing this film if it was going to be similar in terms of tone, in terms of style, and in terms of feel to Annihilation, because Annihilation was a little too slow for me. And so when I was watching the trailers for this film, I was thinking, it looks great, but it's going to be an Alex Garland film, and his style just doesn't totally click with me. It's like Zack Snyder. I've enjoyed some Zack Snyder films in the past, mainly just his version of Justice League, his 4-hour cut. I enjoyed that film, but the thing is with Zack Snyder, I don't really like his style, so I struggle to actually get attached to any of his films and properly get into them. And that's how I was feeling about this movie. I wanted to be excited about it, but I wasn't that excited about it because it was from Alex Garland. Although at the same time, I was interested in it. I was interested in it because it's A24's most expensive movie to date. Plus, when you watch the trailers and when you see what the film is about and you see the way America is at the moment, especially this year with an election coming up later this year, you know, I thought this was a very interesting time to put out this film. And I wanted to see how real it felt, how it was commenting on contemporary politics in America nowadays, and whether it actually did much of that. And I was interested to see how this film was going to approach a futuristic America. So yesterday I went to go and see this movie, and according to Google, the plot synopsis goes as following: in a dystopian future America, a team of military embedded journalists race against time to reach Washington DC before rebel factions descend upon the White House. And that's pretty much all you need to know about the film before seeing it. And honestly, I thought this was a very good film. Now, the first hour I didn't love. It was a little too slow for me, and it felt like Alex Garland's previous films. Well, it felt like Annihilation more, where I just couldn't really get into it. But then, in the second hour of the film, because the film's about 2 hours, I think it's just under 2 hours. In the second hour of the film, as soon as Jesse Plemons' character comes in, and he's not in the film that much. He's really not in the film that much. I want to emphasise that. But as soon as he came in, I was completely hooked throughout the rest of the movie. He completely steals the show. Like, I was terrified of him when he was on screen. And I haven't seen Jesse Plemons play villains before. I haven't seen Breaking Bad. It's one of those shows I just keep meaning to watch, and I know he's meant to be quite terrifying in that as well. But as soon as he came into the film, I was literally gripping the edge of my seat. And then throughout the rest of the movie, I was really just hooked into everything. I felt attached to these characters. I didn't realise how much I was attached to these characters until I got to that scene in the film, until I got to the scene with Jesse Plemons' character, because the first half of the film, again, it wasn't really clicking with me. But then I realised in the second half of the film, oh no, the first half of the film was important, because actually it did get me interested and invested in these characters, and it got me to actually like these characters and to understand their situations, and it made me exist in this world. It made me live in this world. That's what I meant to say. It made, what I did like about the first hour of the film was that, yes, it was slow, but you get to live in this version of America in the future, which is harrowing at times, and it's distressing to watch. And I liked that first hour on reflection because of how it made me feel in the second hour of the film, where my heart was pounding in so many sequences, like particularly the final section of the film. I wouldn't say it was the final act of the film, although I suppose it kind of is. But the big finale of the film, if you've seen the film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The big finale of the film, they're trying to get to the White House. As I mentioned, my heart was pounding. I didn't know what was going to happen. And the sound design, wow, it's immersive. This was an immersive experience watching it in the cinema. I don't know if I would feel the same way about this film. I don't know if I'd say this film is very good if I didn't watch it in a cinema. You know, being completely honest there, if I watched it on streaming, I may have felt the same way about this film as I did about Annihilation. But watching the cinema, watching all these immersive visuals, because this is a visually stunning film, beautifully shot, with the sound design and being that close to the screen, because I was actually quite a few rows down in the cinema, and watching those final scenes take place, I was like, I want this to end, and I want to look away from what's happening, but I can't at the same time. This is terrifying to watch, and yet so immersive, and just in the best way possible. That finale to the film really blew me away. And it wasn't just the finale, like the whole second half of the film I was floored by. I really was taken aback by how much I was engaged in the second hour of the film compared to the first hour, which again, I didn't hate the first hour. I actually liked the first hour on reflection because of how it made me care about these main characters we were following. But the second hour of the film, it felt like a different movie to me, and I liked the sort of movie it became. It's an anti-war film, and I really admired how it was displaying that. Plus, it's an apolitical film. It doesn't choose a side. This isn't a film that is biased to Republicans or biased to Democrats. This is an apolitical film, as I've already said, and I think it's better for being that, because you get to see that there are problems with both sides. This film shows that there are problems with people who are far left or who are far right, and I really admired how it made you question what you really think about these different sides of the political spectrum. And I thought it was better for being apolitical. I know some people have had problems with that, but I liked that it was apolitical because it made you question, what side are you really on in all of this? You know? And I don't think the film makes a decision either. It doesn't at one point say, oh, we're on the side of the left or the right. It doesn't do that at any point. Instead, it is far better for, making you make your own mind up about all of this, because it's a thought-provoking film. It's a harrowing film with that. I'll use that word again. It's a harrowing film. It's a brutal film. And it's a violent film at times. There is some really scary things happening, which are quite distressing to watch because it is a contemporary war film. This feels like, watching it, it felt like it could actually happen right now. It felt like within the next couple of years, this could actually happen in America. And there was quite a few moments in the film where all I was thinking was, thank God I don't live in America right now, because this is really making me scared for the people that do, you know, because wow, it is a violent and distressing film. It's unsettling. It's a difficult film to watch, and I'll probably never. Actually, I'm not going to say never, but I probably won't rewatch this for a long while because, first of all, I'm afraid I won't have the same cinema. I won't have the same experience because I watched the film in a cinema, and if I watched it at home on DVD or on streaming, I just don't think it'll have the same effect on me. But also, it's not a film which you want to watch and repeat views because it does feel a little close to home at times. You can actually imagine this happening in the next couple of years, and I mean that in a good way because it's a very believable and authentic film, but at the same time, it's also, I don't mean it as a criticism, but I also mean it as a worrying way, because God knows if this does happen, the result of certain things in America in the next couple of years. Let's just say that the way this film displays the state of America in this dystopian future is not pleasant. Yeah, it's a film which really affected me. I got to the end, and I won't say much, but the credits of the film have this still photograph on whilst the first couple of end credits are playing, and I was sat there kind of in awe of what I'd just seen because of, and how it affected me, how it actually got to me, because it didn't feel like it was affecting me whilst I was watching the film up to a certain point, and then throughout the rest of the film, throughout the second half of the film, I was sat there and I did feel emotionally attached to what was happening, emotionally attached to these characters and their situation, and I found the end of the film very affecting. Yeah. A little bit lost for words at how I really felt by the end of this movie, because I'm not going to say I sat there and I was in tears, but I was struggling to get out of my seat, and not in a way I expected. You know, it's a film which I haven't really been able to stop thinking about since I saw it. And it's got some great performances. And I think the characters are very good as well. You know, the performances from the likes of Kaylee Spaney, who is essentially the lead in this film, one of the main leads, because it's her and Kristen Dunst. Kristen Dunst shows a very different side to her as an actor in this film. I didn't know she could be like this, and I thought her performance was reserved, but very good at the same time, because you completely believe her as this war photographer who has literally up front witnessed horror. You completely believe her as this person, and I never really felt like I was watching Kristen Dunst past her introduction. I did in her introduction, but then I got over that, and I thought Kristen Dunst gave one of the best performances I've seen her do, because it was very different than I've seen her before, and it felt very authentic. You know, I totally believe as a war photographer. And Kaylee Spaney, she is a rising star. You know, I remember watching her in Bad Times at the El Royale, and then last year she was in Sofia Coppola's Priscilla, which I thought she was very good in, which she played Priscilla Presley. And later this year, she's going to be in the new Alien film, which is already getting a lot of buzz because it actually looks pretty good. And she's the lead here. She's one of those people that in the next couple of years, you're going to see in some big Oscar movies. Maybe even getting some Oscar nominations herself, because she is a star in the making. And this film proves that. She's brilliant in it. She's just great, because I totally believed in her character. Totally believed in her as this person who wants to become a war photographer but hasn't seen the horrors of war yet. I totally believed in this character, and I thought the way that character developed throughout the film, and the way that character was used in certain sequences, particularly in the scene with Jesse Plemons. Going back to that scene, it is the best scene in the film. The scene with Jesse Plemons, and the way Kaylee Spaney's character is used there is really. It's intense, you know, and so much of this film is so intense and so suspenseful to watch. And at the same time, though, it's thought-provoking and it's immersive, and I really was taken back by how much it worked for me because I didn't expect it to. However, if I was to have one criticism, I can't help but think what this film would have been like if it was directed by someone who wasn't Alex Garland. I think this is Alex Garland's best film to date. I think he did an absolutely brilliant job making this movie. But if someone else directed it who's perhaps more familiar with making war movies, I think this could have been better, or who was more experienced with making blockbusters, because if you watch Alex Garland films in the past, films he directed, films he directed in the past, and his films that he's directed are not blockbusters. Like, Annihilation is probably the closest to a blockbuster he's directed before this, but even Annihilation isn't a blockbuster. It just has a bunch of CGI stuff in there at times. This film, I would consider, I wouldn't say it's a blockbuster on the same level as some other huge blockbusters that come out nowadays, but it is a blockbuster. It does have the budget of a blockbuster, and it does, you see the money on the screen as you want to with many blockbusters that come out. You can believe that this film had a budget of $50 million. In fact, I even thought it had a budget of $100 million. I was surprised by when I read the budget. I was like, oh, it was only that. Well, yeah, because you really saw the money on the screen, and I did think, like I said before, Alex Garland did a good job making the film, but if you had a more experienced filmmaker in there who was more familiar with making blockbusters and making war movies, I can't help but feel and can't help but think that this could have been better, because then you may be able to have seen both sides and really got a perspective and everything going on, a reason for why everything was going on at this point, a reason for, I think you really would have got into the nitty gritty side of everything and really made this an absolutely spectacular and emotionally enthralling film, whilst I don't quite think you get that from Alex Garland, because all of his films, and this one included, from what I've seen, feel cold. And this film does feel cold at times, because although I did feel emotionally attached to the main characters, you're still not quite sure who you're meant to side with. And even the characters you feel emotionally attached to, they make some interesting, and interesting is it's maybe not the right word to use, it's probably the kindest word to use in this situation. They make some not so great decisions, and the film does feel cold. And again, if someone else made this movie, I can't help but feel like it would have been better and would have swept up people more emotionally, because this film doesn't quite do that. Like, something happens towards the end of the film, I'm not going to say what, but something big happens, and when it did happen, I didn't really feel any sort of sadness or any sort of heartbreak. And I can't help but feel and think that if a different director did that, if a different director made this movie, I would have felt more sad when that thing happened, or I would have felt more emotionally drained by the end of the film, as I kind of wanted to going into the cinema. That all being said, this is a very good movie. I do think it's worth a watch, and I do think it's worth watching in the cinema if you're interested in this sort of film, if you're interested in, well, the state of America at the moment, where it looks like it's going, and if you're a fan of Alex Garland's previous work, I think you will get quite a bit out of this movie. I also loved how this film was grounded in verisimilitude from the get-go. You felt that this was a real world, and because of that, you totally, at least I totally believed in everything going on, and the needle drops as well. The music that was used in the film, I've heard some people found it jarring. Personally, I didn't. I thought the needle drops did a great job of encapsulating certain scenes and certain sequences in the film, because I've listened to some of those needle drops since watching the movie yesterday. And as soon as I listen to those songs now, as soon as I listen to those needle drops, I'm like, yeah, completely takes me back to the film, as the best needle drops do. So I really thought the needle drops were done well, and I really admired how the film was grounded in verisimilitude from the get-go. And I do think it's an immersive experience, which is another reason I think you should watch it in a cinema, because the sound design, you really feel like you're there with the characters, particularly in the war scenes, in the scenes where there's a lot of guns being fired. It literally, in my cinema, felt like the guns, the bullets were bouncing around my cinema. It was that immersive. Plus, it's a thought-provoking film, and it's a very, interesting contemporary war film that I think won't leave you anytime soon. I definitely recommend it, and I thought it was a very good film, but I can't say I found it incredible though. I can't say I found it to be an excellent movie, because it just didn't quite hit me emotionally as much as I hoped it would. Like, it didn't make me feel emotionally drained by the end of the film. By the end of the film, I was in awe of how it affected me, but at the same time, I wouldn't say... I don't know how much this is making sense, by the way, because I think even I'm starting to confuse myself. But even at the end of the film, as I've already mentioned, I did feel affected by what I witnessed. I didn't feel emotionally drained, though, and I wish that I didn't. I did think this film had a potential of doing that, but it didn't quite hit that mark. Still, I thought it was very good, as I've already said numerous times in this review, and so for that reason, I'm going to say that Civl War, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I am really happy that I liked this film quite a bit, because I was hesitant to watch this film before seeing it, and it's because it's Alex Garland. I don't know why his films don't really click with me, but this film did. It did click with me, although I don't know when I'll rewatch it in the next couple of years, or if I'll rewatch it, because of how distressing it is at times. And yeah, it's a difficult film to watch, but I also think it's an important film to watch at this point I do think it's an important film to watch now. I think it's a very important film to watch now, and I was really surprised by how much the second hour of the film worked to me, because that was the hour of the film where I felt the most attached to what was going on. I don't wish, but I just can't help but feel if someone else directed it, it could have been better. That's all I'm saying. It's a very good film, very, very, very good. And that's where I'm going to leave it. And so, that's where I'm going to leave my thoughts on Civl War. And so, all in all, as I said before, and as I'm going to say once more in this review today, Civl War is an 8.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Civl War, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you hated the film and thought it was absolutely terrible, or maybe you loved the film and thought it was an absolute masterpiece. Whatever your thoughts are on Civl War, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you watch this on YouTube, you should also know that you can check out this podcast on Spotify. That's Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you did listen to me on Spotify, thank you very much, by the way. Thank you very much to Spotify, to my Spotify listeners. You should also know that you can check this podcast out visually. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Whether you watched or listened to this podcast, thank you as always for watching or listening. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. I look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.